Hi, I'm Stephanie with Baby Lock, and we've already shown you how to basically prep and create a t-shirt quilt top. And today we're going to show you how to add some creativity to your t-shirt quilt and ultimately finish it, and we're going to be using the Baby Lock Catherine. So let's jump in, let's get started. Okay, sometimes we run into a couple of I wouldn't say problems, issues, I guess, with cutting our t-shirts and wanting to save both the front and the back. So if that's the case, you can do something like this, where you piece just part of the logo of the front and the back, and if you can see, there's a seam here. So basically what I did was I interfaced it like we talked about in the first video, and I sewed the front and the back, and I sewed it larger than I needed, and then I cut it down to the same size square that the rest of my squares are. So it's pretty easy, and you can barely tell that it's there, and that way you salvage both the front and the back. Another thing that you can do, oftentimes there's like a little logo, sometimes on the back, but a lot of times on the front of your shirt, the upper front side of your shirt, and sometimes you want to keep that logo. And so what I did here was I used a setting on my machine to do an applique, like an embroidery applique, and I created that with my embroidery machine. But there are also other ways that you can applique with a sewing machine, and that way you can salvage that small little logo there. Okay, sometimes you have some fabric that has some meaning to it, or maybe some baby bodysuits that aren't quite the size of a t-shirt to cut big enough for a block. So you can piece several of them together and create a really neat looking block. So here's a good example of that, and sometimes you just kind of have to get creative because all of your logos and different things that you'll be including in this square will be different sizes. So basically something I started with was cutting out the logo, and I always cut bigger than I need, and then I cut down to fit. And so I cut bigger than I need, and I sewed several things together, and then I cut the whole square down the same size as the other squares included in the quilt. Okay, so once you have your quilt top completely finished, you need to make some decisions about the fabric that you're going to use on the underside of the quilt. And you can always go the more traditional route, and you can use a quilt backing, which usually you can find for about 108 inches wide. So if your quilt's bigger than that, then you'll need to piece a couple of fabrics together and create a seam in the center. And you can back it and use a batting in the middle, and then your quilt top. And then after you get that together, you'll quilt it, which we'll show you how to do in a second. But I will show you in this tutorial kind of just how to use a Cuddle fabric. And I really love the Cuddle fabric on the back of a t-shirt quilt because oftentimes it's just as the name describes it, it's cuddly. So yeah, let's jump in and get started on those. Okay, so if you're using Cuddle fabric, what you're going to do is you're going to get a piece big enough that's the same size, maybe a little bit bigger than your t-shirt quilt top. You're going to put pretty sides together. You're going to pin around the entire rectangle or square, and you're going to stitch a 1/2 inch around the entire thing, leaving an opening so that you can turn it right side out. And then from there, after you've turned it right side out, you're going to pin around the entire thing again, and you'll want to top stitch around the edge of the quilt to keep it from rolling to the front side. And then from there, we're going to quilt along our lines to keep it from rolling even more. So a couple of things, as you're sewing, I would recommend once you start using the Cuddle fabric to get a walking foot on your machine. It's going to help immensely because it's like a second set of feed dogs on your foot, helping pull both the layers of your fabric through. And then again, you're just going to use your universal 7511 needles. Something else I would recommend when you're trying to push the quilt through the machine is something called machingers. Kind of fun. It's a set of gloves that actually feature a coating that helps give you a better grip. So we're going to put those on. They'll make you feel really professional. Okay, and now we're just going to go over quilting right down this seam here. Okay, so now we're going to quilt the layers together to keep the backing to stay in place. And you'll want to do a little back stitch T-shirt quilts are kind of difficult as far as choosing what thread because typically you have a lot of colors included. So I would just go with a basic white polyester or a gray polyester, something that will kind of blend. Because of the thickness and the plushness of the quilts, the thread kind of sinks down in anyways. And you'll want to have this completely pinned, either with safety pins, that helps avoid a lot of poking, or straight pins. Just watch where you're going. Every now and then you'll need to stop and straighten up. And that is feeding through so smoothly. So now you'll just continue on all the way down to the edge of the other edge of the quilt and backstitch at the end there. So now you can see that once we break it into simple steps, it's really not that intimidating of a project. So, you know, round up your t-shirts and get them together and let's get started. You can see that even this top stitching here, even if you don't think you can sew a straight line because of the thickness, it sinks down in and so you can't hardly even see it. So it doesn't have to be a scary project. And once you get it all done and completed, this is my go-to blanket. I would choose this blanket over other blankets because of the fun memories, because of the special work that went into it. And I hope you enjoyed the project, and definitely check out more projects at babyblack.com.